you focus on your team first and they know that they're the number one priority, it's not. They almost become as engaged and bought in on the mission of the company, the purpose of the company, personality of the company that you're building, where they're carrying the torch the same way you would carry it, which then leads to improved customer service, a team who's focused on being cost conscious because they know that we still have to run a profitable business. So they're almost as focused on the things that you as the business owner should be focused on because you believe in them and you prioritize them first.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Does your fear of failure drive you forward? When you think about the risk that you're taking, you're so determined and working so hard, hustling, that you are just working to avoid any sense of failure. Maybe you put all of your money into this new venture and you have really driven yourself to the bone, if you will, because I've been there. I wanted to find out someone else that had been through this too, and they've made the shift beyond the fear of failure. You may be thinking right now, what is beyond that fear? Well, if you're working through it and you're still operating from fear of failure, it can drive you forward, but it can also be very stressful. So you have to look about the next evolution of your leadership. I went out there and found someone that really embodies this. His name is Brock Berry. Brock is the co-founder, CEO of Adcellerant. They were number 83 on the Inc. list of 2018. They're going to be on it again this year. They just got the letter. And what was really interesting about this conversation was he talked about, that shift he made and some of, the story of that was really compelling about what he was doing before and what he does now and how the company's, even grown faster because he's no longer has that fear of failure as a driver inside him. So you can tune in to feel the full interview. Before we jump into the interview, I want to remind you that if you haven't gotten the worksheet yet, I've organized the core principles of fast growth leaders. These 12 core principles will help you be a better leader. Just go to genehammett.com/worksheet and you can download that absolutely for free. It will kind of give you an organization of the episodes that would fit into, but also if you go and get that list, it would tell you exactly what those core leadership principles are of fast growth companies and leaders. Just go to genehammett.com/worksheet. Now, here's the interview with Brock Berry. Hi, Brock. How are you?
Great, Gene. Doing well this morning. Thanks.
Excited to have you here at Grow Think Tank. I've already introduced you and told them a little bit about the company, but I'd love for them to hear it in your own words. So tell us about Adcellerant.
Sure. Adcellerant is a tech-enabled services company focusing on bringing quality digital marketing solutions to street businesses. We essentially want to bring the same things that Madison Avenue level companies are able to leverage straight to the street for the mom and pop companies that are out there just trying to get by.
Well, I know that the idea and the concept, the technology and everything around marketing shifts so quickly that you guys must be on your toes as an organization. You have about 60 employees, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
When you think about leading a fast-growing organization, you have to be a certain kind of leader, right? You have to embrace change and whatnot fairly easily, and you have to get others to embrace change as well. But I want to go back to the beginning. Like we had talked earlier this week in a pre-interview, talking about the importance of you operating from a place of fear of failure. Tell us about what that fear of failure is and where it came from.
Sure. When we started the company, we were bootstrapped. We're still bootstrapped. I think a lot of companies, not even a lot, but many companies are able to start with some really nice funding from the outside. Our funding was, selling our house, maxing out our credit cards, selling my cars and borrowing money from my mother-in-law, pretty much liquidating my retirement. So that was I'd pretty much mortgaged my entire life to be able to do this. So when you have that much essentially debt or financial strain on you tied to the company that you're starting, really helps you in some ways work really hard, but at the same time, you're kind of working from a place of fear. I was very nervous and scared a lot of times that the next thing that we did would ultimately cause me to lose all equity I'd put into this business. And we were kind of on the doorstep of that for the first few years, and it was extremely stressful.
Had you operated from a sense of failure before that, before you started this business?
I don't think I'd ever worked in any role in my life where I felt like I would fail. I've always been pretty good at what I do, and I had great advice from my dad one time. He said, how's that new job going? And I said, well, it's not going very well. And he goes, well, when does your boss come to work? I said, I don't know, like 7:30 in the morning. He goes, when does she leave? And I said, 6 or 7 o'clock at night. He goes, well, come in before she does and leave after she does and work the entire time, and you'll probably figure it out. And that's not always the answer to every question, but hard work does pay off. So I've never really worked from a point of fear before until we started Adcellerant.
How did that fear of failure drive you to create the kind of company you have today?
Fear of failure is a strong motivator, and for me, the chance or the opportunity to lose everything. Also have 2 little girls. I have 4 and 6 now. They're 4 and 6 years old now, but at the time they were basically babies. We first started the company. You really have everything in your life on the line. So what it helps you do is it helps you explore every potential opportunity, and also every way that you could potentially take advantage of those opportunities. And everything that you're going to do when you're in the early stages of any company is somewhat of a risk because it requires some investment. And every dollar we invested was dollars we really didn't have to spend. And certainly money I wasn't going to be paying myself. But what it does is it helps you be far more calculated in the risks that you take and far more cautious and thoughtful, I think, about the risks that you take.
A few days ago when we talked about this, I asked you about the defining moments of your leadership, and you shared a story about the first couple of years you did not, you weren't on payroll. Do I have that right? You hadn't been paying yourself yet. Is that right?
Entrepreneur, yes.
Every entrepreneur can relate to that. I remember the first year I started my business in 2001. I had an e-commerce business, and the first year I went from a corporate salary, which was like 150, down to 30,000. That was what I had paid myself that year. And my fiance, now wife, said, "Do you know what you're doing? Like, can you make this work?" But you had a story about that. The first time you decided to add yourself to payroll. Take us back to that moment and share the story with us and about how that was related to this fear of failure.
Sure. A lot of people, when they start a company too, they have their spouse or partner to rely on to help pay the bills. And one of my co-founders is my wife. So early stage, neither of us are making any money, and everything we own is essentially on the table within the company. We were driving to Albuquerque, New Mexico to help one of our partners. A lot of how our products are sold through media companies. We were driving to New Mexico with our kids and my mother-in-law in the car to help this company sell these products to their local customer base. And on the way, it was really the first time we were ever supposed to get a paycheck. And we were online, of course, driving down the road, checking our bank balance. And this is money we desperately needed personally to pay bills. And the money wasn't there. And I asked my wife, Shelby, I was like, weren't we supposed to get paid today? She says, yes, just check the bank. I said, I did. The money's not there. She says, well, call the accountant. So we called our accountant, and she said, yeah, I meant to call you. I want to let you know you still don't have enough money to pay yourself. So I just put it off. And then I checked the company bank balance, and there really wasn't any money in there either. So at that point, and kind of an inflection point in our psyche, maybe even in how we were approaching things, we knew that we were on the doorstep of failure, essentially, because without some serious revenue or sales to solve the problem, revenue solves all problems, in my opinion, we were going to fail. So we went down to Albuquerque, and over the next 7 days, my wife and I made about 30 sales calls and sold $240,000 worth of product. just to oversimplify what they're selling. And it was without that week and without that trip and the timing maybe of knowing that we were on that close to failure, I don't know that we would have come out of it. That trip saved the company, and that partner, that company that we work with in Albuquerque, saved our company. So it was a very fun and stressful and exciting week, because every sale that we made at the end of the day, we'd recount them in the hotel room and think, okay, good, that'll help us. We need that.
I appreciate you sharing that story, because it's very vulnerable to go back in time and realize that, maybe you might not have made it. And you had to really, obviously you had something good to sell. And because you turned the corner and you built a very strong company from that day. When you think about this, a lot of leaders let the fear of failure stop them. Why do you think that it stops them, instead of the way you've used it is to propel you forward?
I believe a lot of times it's paralyzing. So not knowing what is on the end of each decision or the options that you may have, a lot of times a leader, especially when you're working from a point of fear, you're too afraid to make the decision that you need to make, even though you may think it's the right thing to do. Because if you're wrong, it causes you to fail. And if you're at that point where it's ultimate failure, to the point where maybe you're going into bankruptcy, I think it does cause people to be paralyzed with, in their ability to make a decision. For us, it just made us be far more intelligent, I think, and strategic about the decisions that we were making. I still think we moved really rapidly and quickly, but I think that the best entrepreneurs, you can track this back to like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they're cautious about the risks that they're taking, because they know that if they're wrong, that it leads them to be, to not be able to continue to pursue their passion. So for us, it was a good thing, but I could see how for a lot of people, it potentially causes them so they can't make decisions, which ultimately causes them to fail anyway.
I think the outside world views entrepreneurs as these cowboys and the risk takers, that they'll put everything on the line. But the reality is true, is they really think about how to minimize any downside. And you probably have those structures in place every time you have something new, a new product or a new channel that you're going after. So I really appreciate you sharing that story with us. I've been through my journeys with fear, and courage has really been something I've had to shift and embrace much more deeply as I've grown as a leader. When you think about where you are now, right, you described it a little bit differently. Like, you don't operate from a fear of failure. How would you describe that now?
It's interesting. Once you cross that point where the company is profitable enough to pay you, and you're ultimately able to pay yourself back all the investments that you make, there's a lot of new energy that I think is infused into you as an entrepreneur, because now you're able to make investments sometimes that, to your point of being calculated in the risk and minimizing risk, that you're able to make decisions that potentially are even riskier, because you have the money to spend and burn. If it doesn't work, it doesn't mean you fail. It just means that it didn't work and you wasted some of your investment opportunity. For us, that's been a nice change and pivot. We've been able to make far more investments at one time, and then work across all of them simultaneously, and quickly fail in the ones that weren't going to work, and then double down in the areas where we're seeing big returns. And I think that is one of the major differences from when we started to where we're at today, is we do make far more investments, and they're far more risky than they were in the beginning, but it's helped us propel forward a lot faster, because we're able to identify the opportunities more quickly, and then continue to double down on those things at a far faster pace than we have been able to do in the past.
Brock, you mentioned energy inside there. You get energy when you make money, or when you close the next big business, or that project worked out the way it wants. And then some things take away energy from us. When you think about energy, is that a very conscious thing in your life as a leader?
Are they conscious of the enthusiasm or energy required to be a leader, I guess?
Well, just what gives you energy and what takes away energy from you?
For me, it's seeing our team succeed. As you get to be the point where you have 60 people in your team, you're constantly engaged with them on a very intimate, personal level, and they're developing in their careers. This could be their first job. We have a fairly young company from an age perspective. I think natural technology today. And I love watching these people who perhaps are really good at whatever their particular craft is, but then see them pushed into an area that they're uncomfortable with and watch them develop really rapidly. I get a ton of energy out of that, out of those successes. And I think what kind of pulls you away is when you fail. And I think it's hard for people, especially really competitive people. You find a lot of leaders are former athletes or former competitors in some sort or another. And as they fail or they lose, I think it can pull them or make them a little less ambitious with the next thing they're doing. So you've got to be cautious of that, because you have a leader on your team, or you yourself as a leader, if you continue to fail, you don't want it to slow you down. It's kind of like Kobe Bryant or whoever. If they're at the end of the game and they've taken 50 shots that game and made 10, they're still going to take the last shot of the game. Doesn't matter if they've already missed 40 shots. Because usually they make half of them, right? That's what you have to do as a leader too. It's a really difficult thing to do, but it is important that you keep shooting. Otherwise,
let's take a break here. A lot of leaders really struggle with the things that take energy away from them. They show up because there's so much pressure, so many responsibilities as a leader. You're wearing a lot of hats and your time is very stretched, if you will. Now, if you are feeling this, then you have to understand how to really recognize what takes away your energy and what gives you energy. And you want to design your day and design the work so that you're creating a culture that gives you as much energy as possible. And this is going to be helpful for you as the leader, but also for the entire culture, the entire team, if they're feeding off that energy. So part of your job as a leader is to identify what is, zapping your energy, but also what is zapping the energy of the culture, and for you to remove those things. That, if you have your finger on the pulse there, really will accelerate the growth of your company. Now back to the interview with Brock. Well, I know you made a shift from leading from a place of fear of failure to a place of seeing the opportunity. Is there anything that kind of was the catalyst to that shift, or is it just the natural evolution of the company?
It's probably more the evolution of the company and realizing that every day that we walk in, there isn't a fiery demon kind of chasing us down the hallway trying to capture us. I mean, I think it's just you're starting to look at it more from, you're already at the end of the tunnel. The light you're just fully immersed in that light now, and you can focus on more strategically, more intelligently, how to continue winning. And it does have a lot to do with the financial success of the company. When the company's cash flowing and profitable, you can operate more from a point of opportunity versus a point of fear.
Brock, I want to pivot just a little bit here because we've talked a lot about that fear of failure. Something I read about your company, and I want to get an idea of how it really plays out inside the leadership. But you put team ahead of profits and ahead of cost management and ahead of everything internal in the business. So how does that really help the company grow?
You'd be surprised, and I think a lot of people could use this advice, but you'd be surprised if you focus on your team first and they know that they're the number one priority. It's odd. They almost become as engaged and bought in on the mission of the company, the purpose of the company, personality of the company that you're building, where they're carrying the torch the same way you would carry it, which then leads to improved customer service, a team who's focused on being cost conscious because they know that we still have to run a profitable business. So they're almost as focused on the things that you as the business owner should be focused on because you believe in them and you prioritize them first. It's almost like getting everybody on your team first, right? If you do that, they're going to focus on their clients. You have happier clients, drive more revenue, greater profits, so on and so forth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's really not difficult to do.
Let me add something to this. When people feel a sense of ownership, they really do change the way they work. That really is something that you can engineer as a leader. You can inspire people to feel that sense of ownership. It doesn't take stock options. It doesn't take profit sharing. It doesn't take, all of the normal money features. It's something you can do in the way you lead. Now, I help leaders do this all the time, but you want to tune into how you are increasing that sense of ownership behind every employee, because as you do, they show up and they will walk through walls for you. The loyalty will be through the roof, and their ability to creatively add to the value of the company will really, accelerate your company growth. Now back to the interview. But it's not as common as you may think. You've probably worked in other environments where customer first drove everything, and it seems like that's the right thing to do. But from my experience in interviewing a lot of people like you, most of the people, when I say no, most, it's over 94% will say team first. Because they really believe in the power of developing and growing the team and making them feel cared for so that they can care for the clients. And it really does allow them to be customer centric, but still keep team first. Is that similar to what you've seen with your company?
Yeah. Totally. It's really important to do that.
What would you say to a leader? Say that again.
I said, if you do, you'll find a lot of people excited to come to work, and that's what you want. You want people motivated to work.
I share a line on stage. As a leader, your job is not to get them to do the work; it's to get them to want to do the work. That small little change in there, the language choice of want to do the work is world of difference. The way they show up with that spring in their step. Brock, when you have interactions with other companies, you're talking to other companies, that they might not be putting team first. What would you say to other leaders that are considering what that would do for the company?
I would say if you're not putting your team first, and let's say you're focusing on profits or the customers first, what you really are missing is the amount of buy-in you get by putting the team first. It's kind of what you were just saying. When I talk to our staff, we run them hard, have really high expectations, and accept nothing but excellence from them every single day. So it's not just a constant warm hug around here. People know the expectations are high, but at the same time, even though they know that, and it's very transparent about who's doing well and how well they're doing, because they're so excited because we're putting them first, they do come in more motivated. They're going to come in earlier. They're going to stay later. And then when they see something that isn't working, they feel ownership in what's happening. So they bring it forward and they say, this is happening. This shouldn't be happening, right? This really upsets the customer. We should fix that, right? I'm going, yeah, well, that's a great idea. I would have never thought of that. But it's because they believe what they're doing. And it's funny, those people that are focusing on profits and customers first, let's say hypothetically, they don't realize that by not putting their team there first, they're losing out on all their ideas, on the enthusiasm. People can hear enthusiasm in the inflection of your voice. If you're excited to be at the office, people know it. If you're not, people know it. It all leads to profits. If your customers are happy, your team's happy, you're more likely to be making money.
Well said, Brock, and very much in alignment with the reason why I create this podcast, because I'm connecting with people that are not only fast leaders, but and growing fast companies, but they really are evolving as leaders. So I appreciate you sharing with me your evolution from this operation of fear of failure to one of seeing the opportunity and being able to make smart, decisions and even take the appropriate risk, if you will. So Brock, thank you for being here at the Growth Think Tank. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. I appreciate being on the show. Thanks.
Wow, what a great interview. I loved at the very end where he talked about the sense of ownership. When people really feel that inside the role that they have, they come to work very differently. And it's exciting to have that message be played over and over again. So if you are not getting a sense of ownership that you want, you have people showing up just to do the work, you want them to go beyond responsibility, then I'd love to share with you some of the research I have. I'd love to share with you some of the coaching I do around this. If you have any questions about that, make sure you reach out to me at genehammett.com. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.